Welcome to the Sober Fix podcast, guys. If you are new, welcome. This is the spot where we refuse to let addiction win. Flat out refuse. It doesn't have to be a life sentence. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. We get to move on and tell people about it. Say, look, it's possible. We got another episode on with Robert and Whitney. Whitney just got 18 months of sobriety. Robert's got almost 40 years. I'm at 5.5 years. It's not always easy, but it will always be worth it. Let's get into the episode, guys. What's going on, guys? We are back. We've got the Ask It basket. We cover a bunch of different stuff, bunch of different comments, sometimes questions from rehab, sometimes different topics that are related to recovery. And we've got an exciting one for today. So I just want to say hello. We've got Robert, recovery guy, becoming well now. We've got Whitney on again. We convinced Whitney to come on as well. So here we are. And her family was trying to get her to not come on today. I think she's wanted today. Many of us, it's crazy because there was a time where my phone did not ring and I wasn't wanted anywhere. And so it's cool to hear that kind of stuff, Whitney. I'll start off with you real quick. What's going on with you, Whitney? What's new today?
New today, oh my goodness. Well, the weather's changing. It's my favorite time of the year, but it's also the time of the year that reminds me of sobriety and finding my true recovery. So it's exciting for me. Um, I'm excited tonight to go see Teresa F. speak at the Alano Club. So I'm doing that later. But other than that, I'm just working as usual. Sponsoring women, loving everything about it. About to hit my 18 months in a few weeks. Just happy to be here, you guys. So thanks for having me.
How does it feel to be at 18 months? I remember when you were taking a year, it felt like it wasn't too long ago. Now it's already 18 months. How does it feel?
Amazing. It's like that long stretch where you get all these chips in the beginning, and then it's like they call it the Weiner chip for a reason. So but no, I'm excited. It feels like a pretty good benchmark, and I'm just looking forward to continuing doing exactly what I'm doing. So
That's cool. Congratulations on that. What's going on with you, Robert? What's happening?
Just living the Florida life. I went to a picnic today. That was pretty cool. And, I really want to congratulate Whitney because Whitney and I used to go into a treatment center together. And then I'm going to blow up your anonymity here. Then Whitney relapsed. And I remember Whitney feeling like she disappointed me. And I, as much as I appreciated that thought, I wanted to disappoint her because she has so much potential and she's such a powerful woman. And I'm so glad and so grateful that Whitney is sober 18 months now, because it's people like you, Whitney, that make a difference in the lives of other women. I was talking to a young lady this afternoon and suggesting to her that she talk to her sponsor about starting a closed meeting for women empowering women is such a missing element in the rooms of AA and NA, because no one understands what it's like being held hostage like another woman does. And there comes a point where I stop understanding, no matter what my intentions are. So congratulations, Whitney. I'm so proud of you. I'm as proud of you as I would be if you were my biological child.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah. Hey, and
Appreciate that so much.
You're welcome. I got asked to speak, so I'm speaking October 12th at a club down here in Daytona Beach, along with my. You all know that I'm going to go speak at Akron #1 in at King's School in October 15th, and then I'll be in Las Vegas speaking at the KCB Club on November 5th, I believe it is, and so. Just filling my time, just hoping to die of old age, and I know I'm going to die sober. I'm just not sure if I'm going to get hit by a bus or die a long life. I'm having a surgical procedure on Tuesday called an ablation, which I want everyone to know. This is not bragging, but I have persistent AFib. I finally am persistent in somewhere in my life that happens to do with my heart. And so they're going to perform this procedure on me on Tuesday called an ablation, which is supposed to smooth out the arrhythmia, the rhythm of my heart. So I should be feistier than ever.
Wow, that's amazing, Robert. It's crazy what they can do nowadays. And I just want to comment for anyone listening. Robert gets asked to speak at a lot of places because once they find a good AA speaker, it's a wrap. Like everyone's going to ask you to go. And so the one in Akron, I believe it was was it like the first meeting or something, Robert?
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Bob started it uh, officially in 1940, and it's the same meeting for the last 85 years. And I was asked to go and interviewed, and because that's what they do, they actually interview you before they say yes. And so I'm pretty excited. I'm like a kid in a candy store as a person who's been sober for a long time. It's nice to be recognized uh, by by the crowd that I get recognized. And of course, I got to speak where Whitney will be speaking in a few weeks up at the Wasatch Treatment Center. And my event at Al-Anon went well. Had a number of people come up, and it's really good. Like Whitney's in such demand, family members want her there, and so on, because we give hope. We give hope to people who love other people, and they're losing hope. That and I had people in the Al-Anon room come up to me afterwards and say, my son, my daughter, my significant other suffers from addiction. And thank you for giving me hope that one day they can get well. You know, they don't live with us. I don't talk to them anymore, but I'm holding out hope that someday they'll be able to sound like you and live like you. And actually Heather was at that talk, Whitney. And,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so it's such a joy to be a part of, um, just giving people hope. Drew, you remember what it was like just being as hopeless as Bill, and now look at you in a fine hat and sitting behind the microphone, looking fine, you know, and giving hope to hundreds and thousands of people who are hoping one day to have what you have. And that's just a miracle.
Yeah, I like that you talk about that too, Robert. Kind of the response from Al-Anon members when you did your talk, because those are some of my favorite comments are kind of family members that have stumbled across maybe some of our episodes or something online. And you know what I've realized is there's a lot of people that they don't have any other support sometimes, and they don't know really where to go. And I found that some of them just go to YouTube, they go to social media, and some of my favorite comments were it's like, look, I've been, I made a video about meth, and I thought it was going to be, I thought people were going to be like, what's this guy talking about meth on YouTube? But it was crazy. Some of some of the comments that I got, just parents and stuff like that, whose loved one, like you talked about, Robert, they're not in their life right now, but they're just like, man, I hope that they're able to turn it around as well. So thank you for bringing that up. That was pretty cool.
Welcome.
And Whitney, I'll go to you for this. I know we talked about before we started the recording. We wanted to kind of go over just some of the things that we kind of become before we get sober that are not related to just the alcoholism. So, for example, I know for me, I just turned into this guy that I just could never tell the truth. I just could not ever tell the truth. Even when I would be full on caught. I mean, you could catch me on camera doing something and I'm going to attempt to deny it, and I became like a guy who, my word meant absolutely nothing. I mean, I had the greatest intentions, like the big book talks about, greatest intentions, and that's what I judge myself on. But I had absolutely no follow through. So those are some of mine. We're going to cover some more on this episode. Whitney, what do you think? What do you think relates to you as kind of the person that you became? How you kind of changed because of what was going on in your life with addiction.
Well, you hit the nail on one of the biggest ones, the honesty factor and trying to live this double, triple, quadruple life. I just remember being so like I had identity before I started using, and then it was like this whole loss of identity. Like I was trying to appease, I was trying to be a chameleon. I was trying to,
Mhm.
you know, be a people pleaser essentially to get what I want and all my needs met. And I just remember not even long ago, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, I'm in this relationship, toxic as ever. And I remember thinking, like, I don't even know who I am at all. I've lost completely like what I stand for, what I don't know what I want to do with my life. So it was like a complete confusion or loss of identity that I'm still learning how to get back today. I mean, I've come a long way obviously with that, but I'm still like relearning who I am, and I'm still like discovering who I truly am deep down, you know? And it's a beautiful process. Um, Another thing with my addiction, I also, it became a very sexual, promiscuity kind of thing going on there. Um, I won't admit or deny ever having transactions for drugs and sex, but I wasn't far off either way. I actually lost a partner to that. Um, Not to blow any identity, but she is now down on North Temple, you know, as a sex worker. And it was the end of our relationship for that reason, you know, for not just that reason, but so many reasons. Um, just all these lines of my moral code were blurred, and it didn't matter. I didn't care at the time, or it was worth the sacrifice of losing myself entirely to get my fix or to get well, you know? I mean, I can't tell you how many times, and these things I look back and I'm like, I never in my right mind have I ever thought to do that. Would I ever think to do it again? Like, things like getting into my mom's purse, stealing her cash, and then completely denying it when it's like so obvious that it was me, you know? Um, I did that a lot, and they just would count on it. Like, they'd open up their wallet and they'd see their money missing and they'd just know, you know? And it's just like those kind of, um, I don't know, my ethics were just blown out of proportion. It didn't matter. So I think that's what we were getting at a little bit. But let's turn it over to Robert, see what he has to say.
Yeah, thank you for that, Whitney. I could totally relate to all that. Go ahead, Robert.
No, I think Whitney brings up something, and I love the way she framed it. Um, our moral code is blurred. Um, if we look back, as I would look back, even as Whitney was talking and as you were speaking about not being honest and stealing money, I can remember when I was 6 and 7 years old, stealing quarters out of my mom's purse, hoping she wouldn't find it. And there's always things that we say we won't do that are deal
Mhm.
breakers for us, and yet little by little, as that line gets, as our moral code, as Whitney said, gets blurred, we begin not only doing them but defending them, as you referred to earlier, Drew. We 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 begin to defend. When I spent 6 years, I moved from Southern California in 1980 to Las Vegas in June or May of 1980, and it was the beginning of my last bottom. Um, when I dabbled in drugs, I did a lot of drugs, but I wouldn't say I was a drug addict. I was straight up alcoholic. Alcohol was my number one jam. And yet, when I moved to Las Vegas, alcohol, because I had to go at such a rate of speed, it was a 24-hour town, and my wife and kids were living with my mom and dad, and I was staying wherever I could stay. Um, and and little by little, I started to do drugs more, like meth and crystal, and uh, and then I started gambling, and then little by little, all of these other behavioral issues became predominant in my life, because at some point, when you drink as long as hard as we do, as many of us do, alcohol is never enough. and we justified, I justified amphetamine because I did cross tops and meth tabs when I was in high school back in the 70s, but I started smoking crack and started uh, snorting a lot of meth when when I got tired of remorse. And remorse is when you feel bad today over what you did yesterday. And when you drink the way I drank, remorse came 7 days a week. So in my mind, this made perfect sense at the time. In my mind, if I could stay up 3 or 4 days at a time, I could cut my remorse down to times a week, not 7 times a week, because I only woke up 2 times a week. I was up the rest of the time on meth, on crystal, while I was drinking. And that became my justification. Well, I know it's destroying me, but I don't feel like a jerk. Like I'm abandoning my family 7 days a week. I'm only feeling that way twice a week. And then little by little, the things that we'll discuss started to creep in on me. Once we start going downhill, we continue that slide, and we begin justifying the unjustifiable, into negative relationships, sexual relationships, promiscuity. Um, we begin to set aside things that we would have died for 3 or 4 years prior. Now we're skirting the lines and going over the lines. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And everything that you guys were saying is like, as Whitney was talking about just kind of losing that moral code, it was the same thing for me. And both of you guys touched on this where we kind of have these things where we say, look, like I think everyone has an idea where they say, look, if I ever do that, or if
Yeah.
my drinking ever gets that bad, or if I ever do that drug and administer it this way, then I'm done. And it's so interesting because what starts to happen, at least for me, is as it starts to take over and it's just more and more progressive, I just have less and less say over it. And slowly but surely, what happens is I just accept this terrible quality of life. And you touched on this, Robert, where it's like, where I say, look, if my life ever gets that bad, I'll stop. And then I just can't stop. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting. And I want to ask you real quick, Robert, the gambling, I think you said that you continued gambling until you were a year sober. Was that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And how did you get to the point where you said, look, this is another thing I have to give up?
You know, as we were talking about online, offline before we started this broadcast, um, not doing something is not recovery. It's what we do, and I just I I like feeling good. I like having money. I like not feeling defeated because I would be all excited and all jacked up and excited about my sobriety, and then I would go lose a paycheck. And then I would say, well, I'm not going to lose 500, I'll just lose 200. Well, what does that do? Because the minute you open the door for losing 200, you've lost 500. That's the way it is in Vegas. The minute you open the door at all. And it's really funny that in Florida, in difference to Utah, they have the lottery. And I've been here since May and I haven't bought a lottery ticket. I just, I don't think of gambling as a means to um, any satisfaction. It's the things that I want, not the things that I know are going to take me down not the gambling, not if you buy a lottery ticket, are you this or that or the other. It's just for me, I'm not in alignment with how it makes me feel. You know, um, Stephen Covey um, talks about being in alignment with the spiritual, the emotional, the physical, and the mental. And we talk about it all the time: halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Um, I don't, because I keep a checks and balance on those areas, I don't feel emptiness where I think money is going to solve a problem. You know, I have enough money. Um, if I want more money, I'll go drive Uber. I'm not going to go, gamble somebody else's hard-earned money. And it was just, a lot of it was because it wasn't consistent with how I chose, because by this point I could make choices. Remember when drugs and alcohol make choices for us? Now we turn the table on the substance. We can begin to make choices in our brain. I think our brain gets rewired. The synapses start working again. The neurotransmitters are firing on all eights, and we react sanely and normally. And you know, sane people don't lose $500 in the hopes of winning 1 million. They take that 500 and they spend it on mortgage and gas and other things like that. So again, like everything else, it just became like we were talking. I became bulimic, and I was throwing up 3 times a day. I was 18 months into my sobriety before I stopped throwing up. Why? Not because I didn't like throwing up, but because it was no longer consistent with the lifestyle I had chosen based on the 12 steps of recovery. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And it's like, I kind of see it all the time and I've gone through this where all I cared about in the very beginning was just kind of putting the drugs and alcohol down. That's all I cared about in the beginning. And then
And
once
that's
I
great for a
did,
start.
yeah, exactly. It's like that got me started. But then as time went on, I started running in just to problems with my character where I was
Yeah.
kind of just super emotional. And I remember almost walking out of this job one time for basically no reason. And I remember trying to make like fast money on the side. And I just kind of involved in all this weird stuff on the side. And, what started to happen is I realized that, like you mentioned, Robert, I couldn't be in alignment with the recovery program and the spiritual way of life I was trying to live, like doing those things. I guess if that makes sense. I want to ask you, Whitney, did you reach a point where you got sober and you kind of realized, look, this is more than just putting the drugs and alcohol down?
Absolutely. Like Robert mentioned, I came into recovery this last time and got a little time, but I was also involved in the recovery community and I went back out. And the difference this time is exactly that. In the past, I could always put the drugs and alcohol down for whatever various reason at the time it was, or maybe I could lock myself in my house and get a good week sober and then try to, but this time around, it's been so, I don't want to say easy, but without difficulty because I found this program where not only do I go through the process of the steps where I can like leave all that shit behind and like kind of let go of all the stuff that was weighing me down and making me feel shameful, but I continue to work with people, work with other alcoholics. I now sponsor women, and that is the most joyous experience out there, and there's just so much happiness I get from this program that I can't imagine living without at this point. I can't imagine not having it. And I know I wouldn't be sober today if I hadn't found a program to work. And it takes surrendering 100% in the beginning and throwing out whatever I want because time I've done what I want, I end up right back down in North Temple. So listening, taking advice, taking instruction from the people that have time and that have made this work. That's exactly what I had to do in order for it to work for me. And it still works today. And I know that if I stop doing anything that I'm doing now, even the simplest thing like my morning dailies, that will be a fast track to failure. So I know that I just have to continue to live exactly this way. And I love it. I have so much passion for it now, and I love the people I've opened up and like that have come into my life. I mean, I just never thought this would be my story. I never thought I would sit here and say AA saved my life and like recovery is what I want, but it absolutely is today. So, yes, there was a definite change of pace when I found a program and wasn't just trying to white knuckle it. And, there's that one day at the time motto, but that's in the beginning that worked for me, but now, it's like, no, I need a program. I need to want to wake up in this every day, and I haven't white knuckled it for, almost 18 months. So it's great. This program's great.
Yeah, it's so cool to hear too. Like now coming up on for you coming up on 18 months as well, because it's like so cool, especially what Robert said after a relapse and everything. That was who I was. I relapsed many times,
Mhm.
and so when I hear people now getting these milestones after stuff like that, I'm just like, yes, it's so cool. I just thought of another area on this topic where I ran into insane problems, and I can't really talk about it in the recovery rooms. I could kind of mention some stuff, but it was relationships. My
Um,
relationships with people were absolutely terrible. As my quality of life started to go downhill, all of my relationships did. And you know what's interesting about it? And through this whole process of being sober and kind of looking at my part, if you would have asked me while I was in the relationships, I would have told you everything they're doing wrong, how they are not treating me right. They're messed up
yeah.
people. They're crazy. And then through the recovery process, I came to realize like, well, who would be with me though when I was that sick is kind of what I look at now, and I realize my part in it too. So I would say relationships is another one of those areas that completely went south, as I was before I got sober, really. What about you, Robert? Can you think of any other areas? I know you mentioned the gambling. Was there any other area that you can't really talk about as much in meetings, but definitely was affected by your drinking or using?
Yeah. Outside of the bulimia, I would overeat just so I could throw up. And so everything had a purpose. Like I told you, I did drugs, a lot of meth, a lot of crystal, smoked a lot, hit the pipe a lot, just so I could stay awake. That was my justification. And my justification for overeating was throwing up. The more I threw up, the more I could overeat. And in Las Vegas, it's the buffet capital of the world. I would overeat, and I realized, just like my drinking, I would drink more than a normal person should, and then I would pass out. With my overeating, I would eat, 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 and then I would throw up because I didn't want to look like I was gaining weight. So I would throw up in proportion to my overeating, and it was all a part of gluttony. It was all a part of wanting more, even if it was destroying me. I wanted more. Even my relapse, my last drunk, um, well, not my last drunk, but it ushered in my relapse that would end on April 25th, 1986. Um, I drank excessively and I lost a paycheck. I was hoping that money, something could fix me, because I felt so broken. And I think that's what we feel. We feel a sense of brokenness, and we're broken in we're like Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. We're broken. And that's why my motto on my website is from broken to whole. One of my tattoos is broken to whole. And that's what we become. We're like, we're missing a piece. You ever see the cartoon called The Point? It was kind of cool. Harry Nielsen did the soundtrack for it, and it was a guy. It was about a young man who was brought up, and he seemed normal, but he was brought up in the land of Point. And the problem was, even though he seemed normal, he had a round head, and he used to wear a dunce cap so he could have a point and play ring toss with his dog named Oblio. Great story. I probably know too much about it. But we were so broken. There was something missing about us. And we'd be willing to try anything, not to make us complete, but to help us not feel so broken. And that's the transition I think we make, because we know we're never going to be complete. We know we're never going to be well. We've given up on that. But if we can feel not as broken as as we would from time to time, then we felt like we were we were going to drown, but we're treading water. And so these other things, they're like flak jackets. They weigh us down and weigh us down, one addiction, one behavioral concern at a time. And eventually we drown under the weight of all the things we bring into recovery. And that's why I'm a big believer in therapy. I think therapy is so helpful because once you get rid of the alcohol or the drugs, now you have to address that. I just don't know how to live. I don't know how to live without putting something before me that can fix me. Maybe someday I'll be whole. And what I found through therapy and through the 12 steps of recovery, I found an avenue by which I can become well. Am I as well as I could be? No, but that's why I stay in recovery. So I had a friend of mine, Tom Bennett, he's passed away, so I can use his last name. Tommy was a great guy. He was one of my detox counselors at the Nevada Treatment Center. And he said, we can become weller than the well. And that's my goal, is how well, whether I die at 74 or 81 or 89, and I don't know, I'm in a home somewhere, sipping Jello through a straw, I don't know I'm alive, but and I just want to be well. I have an insatiable appetite for wellness because no one is as sick as you and I were. I mean, we were as sick can be. As we previously discussed, we were just once as hopeless as Bill, and yet all of us have recovered from that seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. We were never hopeless in our state of mind and body. It just seemed that way. It seemed so real. That's why Bill on page 30 talks about an illusion, a delusion. The illusion, like we are like other people, or pleasant meaning has to be smashed. We have a delusion, right? And they're the same thing. And we need to get past that and get onto the program of recovery. And then one by one, our load gets lighter along the way because, like Whitney said, the relationship no longer was going to work for her. She's not going to go back there. So she's focused on recovery, and now she doesn't need that. And you had mentioned earlier that relationships were the answer. Who would want someone like you? It's when we stop taking hostages. It's when we stop being a hostage, when we start being true to ourselves. What is really wrong with me? Why am I hungry? Why am I angry? Why am I lonely? Why am I tired? And that's where the 12 steps, any universal monotheistic religion of the world, will tell you we have a need for a creator that lives and resides within us. Now, the cool thing about 12 steps of recovery is that creator can be anything we want it to be, providing it insists on us enjoying life. But we need a power greater than ourselves, that's greater than me, that will help me overcome the feeling of being a nothing. And when I'm something, I don't settle for anything.
Wow, yeah, you covered a lot of good stuff, Robert. I really like the kind of just the idea of we get well. I think you said weller than well, or better than well. That was a mind that had me going. I was like thinking about that after you said it. I'm like, wow, it's so true because I went from being crazy to now having all these different avenues of being able to talk to different people that are sober and finding kind of, you mentioned the higher power and having this, consistent kind of schedule that I've built. And all of a sudden I look around and it's like people are coming to me asking me for advice on stuff and just weird things like that where I was so weird.
You bring up something really cool because you can look at Whitney right now and there's no way that girl was an alcoholic drug addict. She has too much light. Her smile is so good. She laughs at everything, even things that aren't funny, but I think are. And she just, she just enjoys life. And you would look at her and how beautiful and how happy you are. And you'd say, no way, you were once addicted to drugs. You were once addicted to alcohol. Yes, I was, but I'm not anymore. And this is who I am. This is who I am, not who I want to be. This is who I am. And it's hard to imagine us as dependent upon drugs or alcohol, and yet we once were. But we turned the corner and we decided life is meant to be lived. not as a holding pattern until we die.
Yeah, it's such a great point. It's sometimes when I hear some of your story, Whitney, I'm like, wow, she's like cleaned up so good. It doesn't even seem like, you know. And it's funny because it's the same thing with me. And you know when I noticed this is there were times that maybe I think like around a year sober, maybe somewhere around there. And I'd be telling like coworkers, you know, something would come up and I'd tell them a little story from the past and I'd look and I'd see them and they're like, "What? You did that, dude? What are you talking about?" And I'm like, and then I kind of realized, "Oh, I'm not in rehab right now. I'm not in like a meeting right now. It's kind of the wrong crowd or whatever." But do you is it trip you out, Whitney, kind of just how far you've come and when Robert talks about just you know, it seems like it was you didn't even go through all that, you've changed so much. How does that feel?
It's I mean, the transformation is kind of mind-blowing if I'm thinking back, like, just 3 years even, but, I have that experience a lot at my treatment center because they know me as I am now, you know, and, you know, anytime they hear my story, they're like, "Holy," you know, like, "We did not think it was like" half of them 'em don't even know I had a drug problem, and I'm just like, "Really? That's crazy," but yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy to, like, play that tape back and, like, put myself in situations I was once in probably 3 years ago, and I even now, just, like, knowing the whole like, how it all happened, it's freaks me out to think that, "How did I get there?" You know? Like, I wonder, like I mean, I get it, but it's just it scares me to think that that's the effect and the power that this whole addiction can have on somebody, you know? Like, my childhood was great. I didn't have I mean, I had a couple traumatic things happen when I was young, but for the most part, I was raised in a really good family, in a really good neighborhood, and, you know, had all this goodness to my life, and it's like, how did somebody like that go so off track over just drugs and alcohol? But that is the power in this shit, you know? It's scary. It's scary. But yeah, I think back on things and like we talked earlier, like, oh, I will never pick up heroin or meth ever. You will never see me like I'll do all the rest, but like I will never pick up heroin or meth. I will never put a needle in my arm ever. I will never have sex for, you know, things that I can't imagine doing back then, but sure all happened, you know. So dealing drugs, I mean all these things that I just yeah, swore to my grave I would never do and sure enough, you know.
You know, Whitney brings up a good point of all the things that we have done, and yet we, for whatever reason, God's mercy kept us from the consequences of doing those things.
Mm.
And when we go into a treatment center or go into a prison or meet people in life in general, and they're paying the price for doing less than what we did. And as Whitney was talking, I thought, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that. All I was thinking about was how grateful I am that I'm 71 years old, sitting in my garage office online with a couple great friends and some we haven't even met yet. And I'm not going to wake up tomorrow in a prison cell having committed a crime I don't remember, because that's the reality for most people who do what you and I have done. Or they die at 22, 23 years old, and grieving parents have to bury their children. I've met your mom and dad, Whitney, wonderful people. I can't even imagine them without you. You bring such light and love into their life. They're so proud of you. And Drew, I could probably say the same for your parents as well. And my parents have passed away, but they were very proud of me. My dad said to me 9 months after he would drop me off at a motel, and he said to me, he said, "Your mother and I aren't going to watch you die." That was my dad. 9 months later, he'd be over at my house. He gave me a big hug, gave me a watch I still have to this day. And he said, your mother and I used to worry about you, but we don't worry anymore. You know, and all that time, God saved me. My higher power saved me from things that I couldn't even see. All the times that we went through intersections and didn't kill the Jones family of five, or I remember a big thing back in the mid 80s in 85, 86, the AIDS scare and how promiscuous I was with sex. You two were children when that, but it was real for me, you know, and even though um I was primarily heterosexual, it was still, you didn't know where AIDS came from. And you could tell me I was alcoholic, but just don't tell me I have AIDS, because that was a death sentence. And yet I knew men and women who died of AIDS, a tremendous ravaging disease. And yet for some reason, we probably had sex with the same people. Yet I was given the opportunity to escape that death sentence. I don't know why. God hasn't told me, but I'm making the most out of the life, like we are right now. We're making the most out of the life we've been given. And that's what we want for every recovered person. Take what you have and just run with it, because we don't know why God has spared us, but He has. And that has to be enough. And I'm going to get as well as I possibly can be.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Robert. As you know, that was my biggest nightmare, was waking up in a jail cell and not knowing, and just out of a blackout, and walking up, and I see a guard walking by, and I say, "Why are you here? Why am I here?" And they're like, "Dude, you killed 6 people last night in a complete blackout." You know, that was like my worst nightmare. And what's crazy too is there's just so many times that it could have happened. Unfortunately, I look back and I'm the same way, Robert. I go, I don't know why I made it through some of those situations, but I've got to make the most of it at
Yes. And that's the
least.
thing. Make the most out of what we have, because you know what? Every one of us is a phone call away from having our life turned upside down. And sometimes we go through life and we never get that call. Sometimes, you know, how many times have we said they were such a nice person, why did that happen to them? And yet I don't know why it happened to them. I just know it hasn't happened to me. And for that alone, I'm grateful for the things that haven't happened, not only the things that have happened, because the things that have happened pale in contrast, in equivalency to the things that haven't happened. There's more things that haven't happened than have happened.
Oh
And I
yeah.
can't see the things that haven't happened. I just know they haven't happened. I give you a laundry list of things that, come on, Whitney. I mean, how many near death experiences did you have? How many times did
Oh.
you put your life in danger, and yet here you are at 18 months working in a treatment center?
I mean, we're talking hundreds, and I think about this almost on a daily basis. I really like I it's a miracle. It's the whole thing is miraculous to me, and I'm like I sit in so much gratitude because of
Yeah.
that, because I'll still be sitting here on a day-to-day basis, and memories will come back to me that I haven't ever remembered before until like today, and I'm just like, "Oh my god, like and I it's like sheer nightmares coming true, but for some reason, and this is like so much I could get into like spirituality and God right here, but like this is so much of why I believe in a higher power, because I mean, just the happenstance of things going wrong and having them not go that way is like against all odds. It like doesn't make sense mathematically, systematically, all these different things. But I'm like so grateful to be where I am today and to not have any severe, like I didn't lose an arm because I'm an idiot. Like I didn't kill a whole family. Like the worst things that you can do, like I've been spared of those things and God knows why. But like you said, I'm here to make the most of that and find my purpose and not take that for granted, not take a single breath for granted. Like my whole body works, like everything I have all my health for the most part. Like it's just, yeah, I'm so blessed.
You
I'll
know
just
what?
say that.
I think when I met your mom and dad, Whitney, it was when you took your year chip. I think
Hmm.
that's when I met them. And
Yeah.
you know what's neat about that is I didn't meet them visiting Whitney in jail.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I met them at a meeting where she was free to come and go. And I could have met them in jail. I've met other parents in jails visiting their children. But and Drew, I met you over dinner one night in Southern California prior to a meeting, right? I didn't meet you as a result of reading about you in the obituaries or what have you, as a strung out addict. I met you, you know, through an avenue of recovery, and that helps underscore the miracle that you and I are, and what we represent as a team to your audience, because again, it's not what we stop doing, it's what we are doing that separates us. That's what's going to give us our lifetime recovery, one day at a time for the rest of our life, is one of my mottos. It's because of what's happening to us as a result of what didn't happen to us.
Yeah, I love that. It's not about just what we're not doing, but what we are doing, and what we have going on. I like how you put that. I know we're getting kind of towards the end here, guys. I'm going to bring up a couple comments here. We had I'm pretty proud to read this one. I'll go to you for the well, I'll go to both of you for this, but this is Naroshi, and I don't know if it's he or she, but it says, I turned 18 2 days ago. I struggled with addiction from 12 to 16. And he said, I needed to hear this today. This is from one of our previous episodes. But what do you think about that, Whitney? 18 years old, just turned 18 years old, has 2 years sober because used from 12 to 16. Isn't that amazing? What do you think about that?
I always praise the people that get sober young. I mean, just only because the odds are so against you, and to find like that solution and execute it so early in age when you're kind of just still like coming into yourself and wanting to explore, and like that's fantastic. And to start that young, at age 12, and I don't know how far deep it got, but for 4 years that's a pretty substantial um addiction, and to at 16 when you're like a sophomore in high school to have like made the effort, or somehow whatever his story is or her story is. um I just think of me in high school and like the lack of direction I maybe had, the lack of like understanding for who I was, all those things. That's just a very mature thing to do at such a young age, so props to you, keep it up.
Yeah, that's a great point. What do you think about that, Robert? Someone 2 years sober at 18 years old.
You know, I think it's miraculous. I think because when F. Scott Fitzgerald said, first a man takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the man. And I was 18 when the drink started taking me. I didn't get sober till I was 32. So if this young person can get sober as a teenager, man, what a difference they can make in this world, because we're not invincible. That's why we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Not that we beg them so we'll be sober. We beg them because we don't want them to go through what we have gone through. I wish this person nothing but the best, and hopefully they'll stay in contact with this show. If there's anything that any one of us can do for them, we will do to encourage them in their recovery path.
Yeah, and I love what both of you guys said. I'll just add to it's the amount of pain and suffering that this person who is sober at such a young age can avoid is just so
Oh my
cool. And the
god,
amount
yeah.
of people that they can help, the young people's meetings and places. You go in there at 18 years old with 2 years sober. Wow. Such a cool thing. Let me see. I think we had a couple others. One of them said, okay, so they said some people learn quicker than others. And then they said, damn, I am scared of sobriety at the moment. What do you think of that, Whitney? Do you remember being kind of scared to get sober? I know I was. I was scared for a long time. But can you relate to that comment, Whitney?
Yes, I can. And I was mostly terrified because deep down in my wherever in my little heart, I knew that was the last thing I wanted to do, you know? Um, Initially, you have all these high hopes, like you've never tried it, and you like have all this confidence. You're like, oh, I can do this. And you have the pink cloud and you have all these things happen that you have no experience with. Um, and then you have that devastating relapse, right? And yes, everybody learns at their own pace. For me to learn what I know today in order to stay sober, it took me a course of 20 years and it was grueling, right? I had a million different consequences. I had the law chasing me in and out of everywhere. I had so many different reasons to stop. And, it took 20 years to kind of register like, hey, all right, for one, I am an alcoholic. Like you are one of those people, you are hand selected, like you are one of those people that are of the hopeless variety. So this is what it's going to take. And then just accepting that that was the life I had to live if I wanted to stay sober, recovery till the end of my world until if I want to stay sober. And that's what it takes for people like us. So yes, I can relate, definitely.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. People like us, we kind of realize I'm gonna have to do something to have a decent life. I have to do something. And what about you, Robert? Was there a period where you were scared? Did you relate to this, or do you have any advice for someone who's thinking about getting sober but they're scared?
If you're not afraid, you're not ready. I remember being so scared because when I admitted I was powerless over alcohol, that my life had become unmanageable, I knew how sick I was. I did a lot of bad things, but I I couldn't stop drinking for the life of me. I couldn't stop doing drugs. I couldn't stop all that negative behavior. And I wanted to drink, I wanted to use, I just knew I couldn't because if I did, I knew I was going to die. And when you think you're going to die, that's why I went into treatment. I looked in the
Mhm.
mirror and I was going to die. I was 32 years old and I was going to die, and there was nothing I could do about it. I was powerless over any direction that alcohol wanted to take me. And remember, I lived in Vegas. I could, I could take, I could stretch $10 in gambling to 5 drinks, and I could get hammered on $10 all day long. And yet I knew I couldn't do it anymore. And I knew I had to go into treatment. And I spent probably the first 3 or 4 months, guys, um, holding on to my chair because I knew if I left, I would never come back. And fortunately, after my relapse, after 71 days, I sat in the room, and by that time I knew I didn't have to, nor did I want to die. And I knew the only solution I had was to go back to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and do whatever they told me to do because I knew that was my only avenue of living. By this time, I wanted to live so badly because I knew I could. Once we turn the corner and we're around people like we're around, that we surround ourselves with, um, they're living, they sound just like me. What have they done? And I like what Whitney said about staying. All we have to do is stay. In the beginning, I agree. Just don't drink, don't use, just keep coming back. Just keep coming back, keep coming back. It works if you work it, and it won't if you don't. And there is no door number 3. So just stay, sit down, no matter how painful it is, because no matter how painful it is in the rooms, it's much more painful outside the rooms.
Yeah, it took me it took me a long time to realize that. All the fears and anxieties that I had, eventually I realized that they were just never as bad as what I was experiencing on the last couple years of drinking. I think that's a great point. Thank you, both of you guys. I got one last one left here. Let's see. It says and we can cover this quick. I know Whitney has to go somewhere. We got, I'm about 10 days in. My anxiety is hitting the roof. I can relate to this. This is
Mm.
similar to the last one. What do you think, Whitney? Was it like that for you?
Oh God, like the discomfort and the just, like the feeling like there's nothing you can do to fix that. I can relate so much and I sympathize so much. That gets better. Just hang in there. You're doing the hard part now. It does get better. So much of that anxiety and that fear and all those things that like haunt your spirit. Um, are addressed with the steps. The moment I worked my steps and got through most of those steps, and, I got to like 9 and 10 and, well, just doing the steps, all that fear, all that anxiety, like you just put on a whole new pair of glasses, like they say in the book, and everything about your world is different. And you really just have to experience it and trust the process to know. But like, oh my, I remember waking up to that life one day, just like, I don't know when it happened, but all of a sudden life isn't that difficult. I look at life differently. Like having a softer lens on things. I'm not judgmental. I like have love for people. I want to get out of bed in the morning. These kind of things that I just never thought would come for me. And I like to call, the promises of the night step promises. Um, they happen and it's just worth the struggle. It really is.
Yeah, thank you for that, Whitney. What about you, Robert? Do you remember that? I know that was a long time ago now, having 10 days sober, but do you remember your anxiety going through the roof?
Yeah, and I'll make this very brief. I just agree with I agree with everything that Whitney said, and I couldn't add to it anymore.
Right? I know. She killed it. That was awesome. Hey guys, I appreciate you. You guys know how much I appreciate you. You guys come on here all the time. Take time out of your weekend to and let me just throw random questions at you. You don't even know which ones are coming, and we just throw them at you. And it's always such a great time. You guys are good friends of
Hmm.
mine. So I just want to say thank you again. I appreciate it. I'm sure the people listening do as well. So thank you guys.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Drew.
much. Good to see you, Whit. Thanks,
You-
Drew.
Holy shit, you made it to the end of the episode. I appreciate you guys. Hey, if you want to come on the show, reach out to me. I will put my email in the description. I'd love to hear some comments from you guys. How long you've been sober? What's going on with your sobriety? What's working for you? What's not working for you? We've also got our TikTok and Instagram. I'll put that in the episode description as well. And let's go another week sober, guys.